Summer 1944. Churchill had been at war nearly 5 years already. He had seen France fall and stood alone against Hitler. He survived disasters in Greece and North Africa during earlier campaigns. He lived through years when Britain fought while America still prepared. To Churchill, that history mattered. Experience, seniority, and Britain's role mattered. He saw Britain as original architect of Allied strategy, still important. Even as American armies filled Europe, Churchill believed influence should remain. Churchill was not ceremonial. He involved himself deeply in military affairs. He often bypassed channels, sending personal memos and urgent cables to commanders. He had done this throughout the war with British generals consistently. Later, he sent similar guidance and pressure to American commanders as well. He believed this was leadership, using persuasion, pressure, personal authority constantly. When Churchill spoke, he expected to be heard and followed. Dwight Eisenhower understood this instinct and Churchill's expectations very well. From becoming Supreme Commander, Eisenhower received a steady advice stream from London. Some advice was thoughtful, some anxious, reflecting very different moods. Much reflected Britain's deep fear of repeating First World War catastrophes. London also feared overreaching when Allied resources and manpower still seemed thin. Churchill's strategic worldview favored caution, peripheral operations, tightly controlled advances. In Churchill's experience, speed without control had often led to disaster. What he struggled to accept was that war had entered a new phase. By 1944, the Allied coalition no longer revolved around survival, but execution. American divisions now outnumbered British ones by a very wide margin. American factories were supplying the bulk of Allied material for the war. American casualties rose rapidly as U.S. forces carried main ground combat. With that shift came a quiet change in how decisions formed. Churchill still believed guidance from London should shape operations directly at front. He assumed Eisenhower, polite and diplomatic, would keep accommodating British concerns. Churchill did not see interference, he saw himself as steering. He expected obedience based on history, prestige, and Britain's long war experience. Eisenhower never openly challenged this assumption. He did not argue publicly. He listened carefully, absorbed Churchill's words, and thanked him for views. But beneath appearances, something changed. He stopped seeing advice as helpful. Eisenhower now viewed British caution less as guidance, more as constraint. As Allied armies surged, expectations in London and Eisenhower's intent diverged. Churchill believed influence still flowed downward from London through messages and guidance. Eisenhower understood influence now flowed from the battlefield and results. When Churchill expected automatic obedience, Eisenhower quietly stopped granting it. Their disagreement was not personal and not sudden, it was structural. It came from very different war experiences, formed decades apart. Circumstances changed. By 1944, these competing experiences of war were colliding head-on. Churchill's view of war was shaped by earlier catastrophe and failure. As a young politician, he lived through the Gallipoli campaign's failure. Gallipoli combined bold ideas, inadequate preparation, and disastrous execution together. That failure haunted Churchill for the rest of his life afterward. To Churchill, speed without control was danger, not opportunity, ever. He believed wars were won by positioning, preparation, and avoiding irreversible risks. The memory of British losses on the Western Front weighed heavily. He feared rapid, headlong advances into Germany would repeat that bleeding. This thinking shaped Churchill's preferences, indirect routes through North Africa and the Mediterranean. He believed these approaches limited casualties and protected British imperial interests. They also kept constant pressure on Germany without risking sudden collapse. After Normandy, he feared pushing fast across France would stretch supply lines. He warned overstretched logistics could invite a German counterstroke, ruining success. Eisenhower's experience was very different. He had never fought World War I. His career was shaped by studying mobility, coordination, and industrial warfare. Eisenhower believed modern wars were decided by momentum, not static strength. Once enemy structures cracked, he saw hesitation as the greatest danger.
By summer 1944, Eisenhower watched German forces unravel in real time. Allied air power now clearly dominated the skies over Europe. German fuel shortages badly crippled mobility across fronts and rear areas. Communications fragmented. German units often retreated faster than commanders reorganized them. He saw not a poised enemy, but one near collapse. For Eisenhower, slowing down was not caution anymore, it was waste. Every pause let German forces regroup, every delay prolonged the war. He believed safest course was relentless pressure and continuous forward movement. Denying the enemy recovery time became central to Eisenhower's approach. Victory, in his view, meant exploiting opportunity, not merely avoiding risk. Churchill kept sending messages urging greater coordination and operational restraint.
He warned of stretched supply lines and political consequences from overreach. Eisenhower listened respectfully, yet his decisions reflected another emerging priority. He authorized bypassing strong points, exploiting breakthroughs, keeping operational tempo high. This speed sometimes created discomfort among Allied planners used to caution. This was not open defiance. Eisenhower never directly told Churchill no. Instead, he let events speak. Armies moved faster. Orders stressed speed. The campaign evolved in ways making Churchill's preferred style less relevant. Two visions of warfare now coexisted uneasily within the same alliance. One looked backward, scarred by earlier wars. One looked forward, industrial. As the front surged eastward, it became clear which vision prevailed. As armies pushed deeper into France, Churchill's involvement's tone noticeably changed. What once seemed strategic counsel increasingly felt to Eisenhower like pressure. Churchill was now trying to shape a campaign he did not command. From London, he sent steady messages about bottlenecks, flanks, and ports. He warned about advancing faster than ports and support systems allowed. He argued retreating Germans could still launch sudden, dangerous counterattacks. Above all, he feared American momentum might outrun British influence politically. Eisenhower read every message, understanding Churchill's worries were not irrational. Logistics were strained, fuel shortages and damaged rail lines were real, yet he also knew something Churchill could not fully see from London. German commanders were confused, exhausted, constantly reacting instead of effectively planning. Their reserves were thin, their command structure was visibly breaking down. To Eisenhower, this was the decisive moment in the campaign. Slowing now, he believed, would let Germany stabilize and prolong war. Speed, even under strain, offered a chance to keep Germany off balance. Churchill began pressing more insistently through military, political, and personal channels. He questioned American coordination and feared British forces entering unshaped operations. Privately, he resented Eisenhower allowing American initiative to dominate Allied strategy. Eisenhower walked a delicate line. He could not openly break. Alliance success depended on trust, optics, and unity in public. Yet he could not let political pressure override clear battlefield realities. So he responded in a way that defined his leadership style. He did not argue publicly or send sharp confrontational replies. Instead, he kept authorizing advances and plans that emphasized momentum. He let American commanders act decisively within his broad strategic framework. In effect, Eisenhower shifted power quietly, without formal declarations or drama. Authority stayed formally collective, but in practice it flowed mainly through him. Decisions moved closer to front lines. Tempo increasingly replaced lengthy debate. Churchill sensed the shift. His influence followed events instead of leading. Messages now often arrived after decisions had already been executed. Caution tended to appear only after breakthroughs had already been fully exploited. By late 1944, the disagreement had grown deeper than strategy alone. It was now about who truly controlled the course of war. Churchill still expected deference born from long experience and clear seniority. Eisenhower believed command came from responsibility assumed and results achieved. Without a dramatic clash, Eisenhower still made his position unmistakably clear. This war would be fought forward from battlefields, not directed from London.
By late 1944, Allied advance toward Germany seemed no longer in doubt. The front stretched hundreds of miles, supply systems straining but still holding. Germans no longer set war's rhythm. Eisenhower effectively did. Churchill kept raising concerns about logistics, exposed flanks, and political consequences. His interventions shifted in tone. They became cautions rather than commands. Eisenhower acknowledged them politely, but continued moving forward regardless. There was no sharp refusal or public challenge to Churchill. Instead, Eisenhower exercised authority through consistency rather than confrontation. Orders flowed, advances continued, and the campaign's momentum became irreversible. Then, Germans launched their last major counteroffensive in the Ardennes region. The alliance was tested, yet Eisenhower did not yield operational control. He coordinated responses, shifted forces, and absorbed the shock without retreating. Speed slowed where needed, but Eisenhower alone decided when and how. Churchill watched closely. The offensive confirmed some fears and Eisenhower's command. The response was decisive. Germans were contained, then crushed. Advance resumed. By early 1945, the Allied effort had one clear center of gravity. Not London, not Washington, but Eisenhower's headquarters now anchored the war. Churchill understood and did not publicly protest or reclaim lost authority. Britain stayed crucial, resilient, indispensable, but it no longer set pace. What Eisenhower said mattered less than actions. He weighed advice, then acted. This was not ego defeating experience, but command quietly consolidating. In a coalition war where hesitation killed, clear command was essential. Eisenhower did not demand obedience, he earned it by steady leadership. When Europe's war ended, the partnership endured, but it was changed. The battlefield had chosen its leader, and even Churchill knew it.